So Zimbabwe has had a very serious currency crisis that has seen our economy going into the doldrums. And just about 2 years ago, the Reserve Bank said it had brought a panacea to the problem. They introduced the Zimbabwe gold, ZiG. And there's been a lot of debate around the use of the ZiG in the economy and how it affects all of us, you at home and me here. So we're going to have this discussion on our economy, on our currency, and how this country is going to move forward. Here on this, the situation right now, with me, your host as usual, Dara B. Now join me after this break as we go deep into detail. Now, welcome back to this, the situation right now, with me, your host as usual, Dara B. We're going to be getting deep into the economy of this country, in particular, the ZiG. And also, we're going to be discussing the issues around Professor Gift Mugano's meeting with the monetary authorities at the central bank, at the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. Now, thank you very much, Professor Mugano, for joining us to discuss this issue about our economy.
Thank you, Dara. It has been some time before we met, and it's an honor to be here.
Amazing. Now, I want us to just get deep into the issue. You recently had a meeting with the monetary authorities at the Reserve Bank. Now, what are the issues that you were discussing with the monetary authorities?
Okay, so thank you very much. You recall in our last meeting in December, I just want to give you the context of my meeting before I talk about what are the issues which we discussed. That I bemoaned lack of engagement between critical minds, think tanks like myself, with policymakers. And in that discussion, and even other podcasts which I participated in, I mentioned the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Industry and Commerce as critical government ministries and institutions which are not open for engagement. To be specific, I went to town talking about the Minister of Industry and Commerce, that I reached out to him to give him advice on how we can promote economic transformation using industrial policy. Yes, of course, I should also confirm that I eventually met the Minister of Industry and Commerce, which means these meetings are very effective when we meet and discuss. So that issue has been resolved. We are talking. Reserve Bank, we had an engagement. They are actually working on their monetary policy review right now, which they will present as a midterm monetary policy. And part of the ecosystem of policy making process, policymakers are supposed to meet business, labor, academic, and other stakeholders. And I fall in the category of an academic. So they called on me, and we had a meeting. And allow me again to explain, give more context, because I saw a lot of.
I think we'll get to that.
Okay.
We want to have this discussion on the issues the real issues
we discussed. Yes. Okay, fine. So my submission is that I will not go into the specific details. Of course, I'll give the overall picture, because it would be unethical for me to give you the whole menu of what we discussed, because these are under my submission are under the consideration of central bank. And I would, of course, want to see when they present their monetary policy statement, say, do they take the points? So I think it's only proper and fair to say I will not go into detail from an ethical point of view. But the central issue, which I would want to highlight as a broader issue, was to say, for the currency to work, we need to do the production. That's number one. Those are generally agreed views. The strength of a currency is reflected on its productive capacity. There are other issues which were advisory in nature, which I gave to central bank, which they should wear the head of an advisor to government and deal with the structural issues in other line ministries like industry and commerce is advisory, and finance is advisory, agriculture is advisory. But to go into the specific details, it will be very unethical. It will close the space for future engagement. But I gave them an opportunity to present my view. Reserve Bank, likewise, they also had an opportunity to present the position, macroeconomic position, and their policy views for me to critique. I need to say this was a serious meeting because I didn't only meet the governor. I met the governor, the deputy governor, and directors in the Reserve Bank. So it was a full house. So, and I would want to respect that spirit because it was a professional meeting. And at this point in time, I will not go into detail as to what we discussed.
You got out of that meeting saying that you were impressed,
yes,
by what the RBZ is doing.
Correct.
So what is it that they're doing that impressed?
Excellent. That I can tell you because it's not even a secret. It's in the public domain. I was impressed by the way they are managing their mandated policy instrument under their purview. Right. So, for example, Reserve Bank has a duty of controlling money supply. And one of the aggregate of money supply is reserve money. So reserve money for people who are in the streets is the money which is available for use if banks want to make payments. And that is the money which can trouble us when it is increasing, because it means there's a lot of liquidity which will be available for the public, which can cause the exchange rate to run away. So the reserve money is at $4.3 billion ZiG, right? And what is important to then compare with, to say, is it sufficiently covered, is the other indicator of reserve, foreign currency reserves, right? Which is now sitting at $731 million, right? The $731 million, if it is converted into ZiG at an official exchange rate of 26 ZiG against $1 US, it's 19.6 billion ZiG, which is 4 times more than the reserve money. So if payments are made or the TTs are processed for external payments, there is enough cover to cover that reserve money. So we should not have challenge of fungibility or convertibility of those payments for national payments. Now, what is striking is that total deposits in the bank are sitting at $17.3 billion, right?
17.3 billion United States dollars.
ZiG.
ZiG, okay.
ZiG, right? And the reserves in the central bank of US dollars is $731 million, which is equivalent to 19.6 billion again. So if just for today, assuming that all the deposits, which include already money which has been committed as loans, is to be exchanged with available reserves, there's enough cover again to pay, because these reserves which are in the bank, central bank, are more than the total deposit by almost 2 billion ZiG, right? Now, the other thing which also, so that is very important. The other thing which I also liked from a performance review point of view is that when we started with this journey of the ZiG, when it was introduced in April last year, the total reserve was around 280 million US dollars. Now it's 731 million. It's almost close to 3 times what it was. And just within a quarter, last quarter, the first quarter of the year and second quarter of the year, the first quarter of the year, the total reserves were $630 million. And within a quarter, the reserves increased by just above 100 million to go to $731 million. So you cannot sit back as an economist and say it was not, this is poor performance. It is good performance. So when I say I was impressed by those indicators. So then in terms of exchange rate, the black market rate is averaging around 33. Yes, people can talk of 35, 40, but it's holding on there. And one of the things, people might then end up saying, were you shown the reserves? Were you shown the money? The most effective indicator of money supply is exchange rate runaway. And remember last time when we were sitting here, I gave you a simple analysis to say there's a unitary relationship between money supply and the exchange rate in Zimbabwe. So if money supply increases by 100%, the rate also increases by 100%. So the fact that the black market is holding on where it is, it's a monetary phenomenon. Now, I want to end by saying the Reserve Bank work on which they've done as a central bank is not sufficient to guarantee good performance of the ZiG. You need the Ministry of Finance to play their role, which maybe we can talk about later, but they have a critical role to play. But you need even more the work of the Ministries of Industry and Commerce, Ministry of Agriculture, to play their role in enhancing production, Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Transport. So these economic ministries are very central. So the discourse in Zimbabwe is that people think that central bank and Ministry of Finance, but these are critical ministries which are very visible in as far as the currency issues is addressed. I've not had a serious discussion where Minister of Industry and Commerce is here, is saying we are doing our industrial policy and how we're going to stabilize the currency. The currency issue has been understood falsely to be the Reserve Bank and the Ministry of Finance issue. So if you also follow how people are responding to my comments to say I was impressed, you would see that the public is reading that the ZiG is now here to stay because central bank has ticked a few boxes of what they've done. No, it's not like that. As long as we are importing $4 billion worth of goods which can be substituted locally, and half of that is agricultural produce, half of that is manufactured products, the currency will never be stable. As long as Minister of Finance is starving payments and it is restricting the use of ZiG and create a false stability, right? By not paying and by not allowing to be used, you have a stability which is temporary.
I want you to explain to me, to explain to our viewers this. You said there's 19 billion ZiG that is sitting deposits right now. But then you're also saying that the starvation of the ZiG is 19 billion not enough to run this economy.
No. What you need to understand, we are a dollarized economy, right? And our GDP rebased is over 40 billion, right? And our transactions are largely US dollar. So under the circumstance that we are dollarized, the 19 billion for the ZiG is enough, because even Minister of Finance is not using the ZiG to pay for most of the transactions. So the point I'm submitting that we need to have, remember it's the same view which was submitted by IMF, that the ZiG is stable as a temporary stability, and there are reasons for that. It's because it is not being used as the mainstream currency.
But RBZ said that after your meeting, really said that it's ready to take this country to use the monoccurrency, which is like the ZiG.
They are not ready in terms of the ultimate objective. Well, you know, let's separate two things: being ready and working on a roadmap, and which you can then get to the transaction, are two different things. So, and I don't want to contradict myself. What impressed me is what they've done as a central bank, and their policy instruments now are limited. They can't do more, right? They cannot build the foreign currency reserves beyond what they are doing, unless if other ministries plays their critical role. We need a proper, clear roadmap where we build reserves of $4.5 billion, because our imports per year is $9 billion, right? So we need 6-month import cover. The $731 million is just above, if I want to look at it, close to 1 month import cover for all our imports, right? So for Reserve Bank to be ready, they must have 6-month import cover, and it's a road they must move with the whole government system, not alone. And that can happen maybe in 2028, 2027, 2028, if only and if one, we begin to take serious in substituting imports, where we are avoiding importing tomatoes, vegetables, and fruits from South Africa, and we produce them locally. So Reserve Bank is not ready from an economic point of view to introduce the local currency.
If they go ahead, what are the likely effects?
It will go up in smoke, because you are introducing a currency when you don't have enough reserves. So what you must understand from a simplified way of explaining it is that today, let's say today they introduce the local currency, and now the money supply aggregate has to change. Right now we're covered by the US dollar, right? That's why the component of ZiG in total deposits as a share of total money supply, including US dollars, is small. So it means the whole monetary system will be ZiG. Now it means that, remember, when you are exporting, right, exporters don't get their money instantly when they export. They have to wait for 3 months or so to get the payments done, and they have 1 month import cover, which is $731 million. So in between, we have shortages of money. What is covering us right now is the domestic exports in court, the availability of foreign currency, which is in the market, and we are using money from the informal sector to import their brokers. So the system is working because there's another system working outside the normal channel. So if they introduce,
how big is that system that's working outside the control of the RBZ?
Well, it's massive. The economy, the informal sector is 80% of the economy. And if you look at this, is official information from government, the Minister of Industry and Commerce.
So you're saying as John Chairman sits at the apex of the bank, he is not in control of 80% of the system.
He is not in control of 80%. Neither the Minister of Finance is not in control of 80%. The 80% is in the hands of the informal sector.
I want us to look at this foreign currency issue that we keep talking about. The Reserve Bank or government itself, through legislation, has put certain law that, for instance, you can't have more than 10,000. It's 10,000 United States dollars must be banked and stuff like that. Is this significant in terms of? Has this contributed in terms of them building those reserves?
No, not as such. I think the major driver of reserves, in my view, in my understanding, is the 30% export retention, which they retain when an exporter exports, and they get 30%. And obviously, the 30%, by any imagination, will not go 100% into the reserve building, because it also has to service the willing buyer, willing seller. It also has to service external obligations. But also, in as much as there are deposits which will be put in the bank, I have a strong. There are also gold accumulation which is being built by central bank, which are being paid in kind as a payment of royalty, and they are sitting at 3.4 billion. So I'm used to billions. 3.4 tons, rising from 1.5 tons from last year, and that is where the reserves are. The issue of banking the money has got issues, and it could actually add value in building deposits in US dollars. But I think Ministry of Finance has a role to play, because the 2% tax is a thorn in the flesh. Remember, the Ministry of Finance introduced the IMTT on 1 October 2018 is part of the austerity measures. So imagine 1 October 2018 to date, we are no longer in austerity. And the 2% is no longer serving its purpose. To be very factual, when it was introduced, Ministry of Finance was collecting 16% of total revenue coming from the 2% tax, because we were a bit more formalized then. Now, because of informality, 80% now is informal, and the 2% tax is one of the contributors to informality, because it makes no sense for economic agents to use mobile payment platform. People are making a lot of complaints about the mobile payment platforms. It's very expensive, and one of the drivers is what? 2% tax. There's no wisdom in putting money in the bank and then making transfers and then you pay 2% tax. You rather want to give someone cash and avoid that area. So it's one area which I think details the implementation of that policy, to say you must deposit anything above 10,000.
Yeah, but do these laws really work? I mean, we have seen in the public domain with no consequence. Someone is told, go and collect 250,000 from my lawyer, cash. I'm going to get 15,000 fuel, 150,000. And this money is just moving as cash publicly, and there's no consequence. So is the Reserve Bank really in control of this monetary policy?
No, not at all. I think it's self-explanatory. If not only that, I recall that beyond what you are saying, over and above what you are saying, there was actually a picture which we saw in the social media when someone was sleeping on top of money and nothing was done. It then shows you that there's selective application of the law. I can assume if I was the one who did that, who was sleeping on top of money, I could have been called for questioning. But also the laws are not, it also discourages investments and the public trust on public policy.
I wanted, sitting in front of us is an issue that executives at the RBZ are actually involved. Executives fingered in forex plundering scam, and one of the major issues around our economy has been corruption, and there have been allegations that within the central bank there are people who are fudging and manipulating figures for their own personal gain. Has the new RBZ governor able to stem this?
Okay. No, I think that is, in my view, I'll give my view, but I think he also has to give his view, because I just met him for 2 hours, and obviously you will not understand everything which is happening in central bank, so I don't want to speak above my pay grade in terms of what I know. But what I also raised as a view in the public domain is our accountability for foreign currency. And it's something which I have religiously put it out there in every forum where I sit, even here, to say we receive over $10 billion of foreign currency every year. Last year, we received $13.3 billion. And this year, mid-year, we received $6 billion. First 5 months of the year, $6 billion, which was more than the previous year by $1.5 billion US dollars, which means that if that trajectory continues, we might actually hit $14 to $14.5 billion this year. And by that, we qualify to be, we have been always there in top 5 of major receivers of foreign currency in Africa. But we struggle in terms of availability of foreign currency on critical issues, and we keep on borrowing, for example, from Afrexim Bank. So the issue has been always there that there's no proper accountability of foreign currency, and there's illicit financial flows, which is documented. You might remember that ZimCode did a study, and they presented to Parliament, and they showed that we lose $1.8 billion every year due to illicit financial flows. So the biggest challenge which we have in this country is corruption. And there's no way those illicit financial flows are happening without central bank, because they clear the payments. So it's an issue which I think is beyond even central bank. It also requires security agents to work on it. The pillars of government which are in the architecture of security and avoiding money laundering. So to leave it to the governor alone, I don't think it's fair for the country. And I would want this question to be answered by those, I need to say, what are they doing? Isn't it alarming that you lose $1.8 billion every year? And you complain that we are under sanctions. So we sanction ourselves also by allowing excessive outflow of money. Imagine if we were controlling that money and it is retained in this country using a multiplier effect of 9.43 times. Because in Zimbabwe, on average, $1, if it goes around the country, when I buy vegetables, are changing hands. And when it returns back into the banking system, it would have left an effect of $9.43 in terms of its impact in the economy. So multiply that by $1.8 billion. We're talking about over $10 billion of impact, a cyclone of money causing havoc in terms of demand, in terms of production. So we have missed an opportunity for years on retaining, on controlling that challenge. And I don't know where is ZEC in this whole thing, Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission. I don't know where is the Economic Intelligence Unit of the country. I don't know where is ZIMRA in this. These are critical police. So that is an issue which I think we are doing to ourselves.
So given this explanation that you have given, and also the fact that Professor Mugano, you have made your political inclinations very, very clear, that you will not work or associate yourself with the government of ZANU-PF because of its inability to deal with corruption, its inability to deal with the social issues that affect the people of Zimbabwe. You're going to RBZ has made people think twice about your statements. But what is your position on that?
Okay, so let me make it very simplified. First and foremost, I must define myself. Who am I? I'm a professor of economics. I'm a technocrat. I don't only engage with my country. I also engage in the region where duty calls. I'm not going to mention how many countries I've worked within the region. That's first thing. What is my objective? As a Zimbabwean, my desire is to see a working country. That's that one. I'm not apologetic about it. I am not a person who wish things not to work for my country. So if people are going to psychologically blackmail me for that, or call me all sorts of names for that conviction that I want things to work, so be it. Now, I take you back to when we were starting. Here, we were talking, and you asked me, do you talk to government? I said they don't open their doors. I say it a number of times, and you can go back to our interview, which we did in December. I was very clear. I mentioned the Minister of Industry and Commerce. I had a meeting with another podcast. He asked me the same question. I mentioned the Minister of Industry, and he called on me and said, Mugano, let's talk. And we met, we talked. I gave him my views.
So some people believe that your engagement is looking to bring you back to the gravy train, because you were fired from Fiscal board, you were removed from the Zimtrade board, and now you are causing so that you go back there.
No, let me finish the first part, then I'll answer that one for completeness. So now, the governor of central bank said, let's have a meeting. We are doing mandatory policy consultation. So I should then refuse to say, I'm not meeting the central bank governor. First, I have laid my principles and my values, what I stand for. So it means I will be inconsistent to what I stand for as a professor of economics and as a person who wants Zimbabwe to work. Secondly, I was complaining that when I knock on their doors, they refuse. Now they call on me and say, we are consulting on monetary policy. If I would have refused to play with the gallery, then it means I'm a hypocrite. It means I'm insincere. It means I'm anti-Zimbabwe. Because what was it I wanted to say? I wanted to be part of the policy consultation, right? I met the Central Bank of Zimbabwe. The Central Bank is not a political organization.
But I asked you, sitting on this chair, if you had been offered the job to be central bank governor, you said you'd refuse.
Those are two different things.
Yes.
Right. So I'm saying you should also have asked me in the same meeting that why do you want to advise them? Right. Remember, the government of President Mnangagwa is in charge. Right. Whether we like them or you don't like them. Right. So you cannot then say when they're in charge for the next 5 years. And we know the pain points which is affecting the poor, which is affecting us, which is affecting you and me. When the currency run amok, there's the impairment of our assets and our currency. And I am I'm not an economist for grandstanding. I want to contribute, and they gave me the platform, and I met them because I have to own up to my request, and that is professionally right what I did. But if people have a right of disagreeing with it, it's not a problem. But you can't be inconsistent at that level. Now, let me go for the grave train that you're talking about. To say you are joining the grave train. There's no one who is joining anybody here, right? It's a view which people are, of course, rightfully thinking because a number of people have joined the grave train. That is a fact. I'm not that type. I'm a raw guy from Chimanimani. My values, what I teach my kids, is to work hard, believe in myself. That's my legacy. I'm not a person who can be bought by silver. And there's a lot of things out there. I'm not more focused on what people are saying in the terraces. I focus on what is my purpose. And time is the best judge on who is gift Mugano. People can give you names, but you must believe in what you are doing. But the same people were excited when I was saying, I'm trying to talk to the Minister of Industry and Commerce, he's refusing. They were happy with that. When I meet him, they are not happy. So what do you want? You see. So, and also, I've also seen that people are so angry in Zimbabwe to an extent that a statement can make 100 meanings in the public domain. To say, I met Central Bank and I was impressed with what they are doing. And according to the reading of the market, for them, if you are impressed with what Central Bank is doing, it means ZiG is 100% now fit and fine. It can now work. That's not what I said. Because there are other factors which I said. But it's only fair to recognize what one has done good. Because it will be clearly hypocritical to say, you check the metrics and they are performing well, they are moving in the right direction. You encourage them. Because you cannot advise somebody to do a particular policy and they are moving in the right trajectory. They have not arrived, but they are moving. Then you must give them a pat at the back. So that tomorrow when they are not moving in the right direction and you say, you are now going in the right direction, they should be able also to understand where you're coming from.
Professor, would there be movement in the right direction when the general public do not have savings?
Right. So let's separate broader macroeconomic environment, which have to be addressed by whole government system. And that is where the people don't understand. I've told you from the beginning that even if Central Bank tick all the boxes, you are not going to have macroeconomic stability if there's no massive transformational changes in the economy driven by structural policies, your industrial policy, your agricultural policy, your trade policy, your mining policy, your investment policy, your energy policy. Nothing will work in this country. But you cannot then be blind to say, here, there's something which is working here. You hear me?
But I want to, I really want to understand this, because in the absence of savings from the general public, from the working class, in the absence of savings, where is the bank getting its money? Where is the bank getting its money?
So we need savings, but for us to create savings, first you need to build confidence, right? People have lost their money over 3-4 times. So people won't wake up overnight and say, we're going to save money. Now, if you are going to build savings, you need to be productive, increase incomes, because savings are a function of income. Because when you have income, you do two things: you consume and save.
But where's the bank getting its money from? Where are the banks getting their money from? I for the life of me, I think deposits from individual savings that are left sitting in banks are the ones that propel the economy, that build the economy, rather the industry. This is where they borrow from. And when your teacher cannot save every payday, they withdraw money to the last cent from their account. Even some bank accounts have been sitting dormant because no one is putting money there.
Correct.
So where is this country getting that money from?
So we don't have a saving culture in this country, right? We don't have a saving culture. And the banks, in terms of capitalization, in terms of amount of money they are holding, is insignificant to drive serious investment in this country. That is not a debatable issue, right? Under normal circumstance, we should have 25% of our GDP as savings, right? So if our GDP is now above $40 billion, according to new metrics, right? It is therefore means we should have at least $11 to $12 billion as savings in our banks, right? But I've just given you the numbers when we're starting, that the reserves which central bank is holding at central bank, $731 million US dollars, is equivalent to 19.6 billion ZiG, right? Which is more than the deposits, the broader money, the total money in the banking sector of 17 billion ZiG. So basically, I can say we are below $700 million in terms of our total broad money in the bank. And I'm telling you, under normal circumstances, if we were having a saving culture, we should be having $11 billion US dollars, not even ZiG. So we don't have savings in our country. That is as simple as that. And the question, what do we need to do? And my view is that it rests in the structural policies. The monetary policy and the fiscal policy are complementary policies. What has been missing in our trajectory is the debate on our industrial policy, our trade policy, our agriculture policy, and other sector-specific policies, which are very critical in driving production. Our central issue is production. We need production for us to have higher income. Higher income, higher aggregate demand. Higher income, higher savings. Savings is identical to investments. So we don't have investments. If you go to banks and say we want $100 million to put up a production facility, you won't get that money because there are no savings. So you can't invest. So your point is very clear. And that is a structural issue which Zimbabwe must deal with.
So if I tell you that the black market rate is holding simply because people don't have savings, because if they had savings in ZiG, the black market rate would have moved, because no one would want to save their money in ZiG. They would have gone to look for the US dollar on the black market.
The black market is holding because Ministry of Finance is not paying. It's not paying contractors, it's not paying service providers. Companies are owed money. See, the companies are owed money. It's Ministry of Finance owes money service providers.
So this stability is fiction.
It's fiction. There's no question about it. I put it in my Twitter, it's fiction. It's a rigged stability, right? And it's also holding.
So why are you being impressed by rigged stability?
I was impressed by the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, not by my Ministry of Finance work. There are two separate issues. If I had made the Minister of Finance and say I'm impressed, you're supposed to take me to the medical order and check my brain. So don't be narrow, don't be selective when you are listening. I was impressed by Central Bank. And I can tell you, they presented to me, we spent more than 2 hours. They've done their work. They've done their work, and they have no any option in their policy instruments as Central Bank, which I've told you, to do any maneuver in terms of adjusting. You need the Minister of Finance to do their work. Why? One, by promoting use of ZiG, by paying using ZiG. They are not paying using ZiG. Whenever they pay, they use US dollars to pay contractors, because they are afraid that if they put more payments, there will be a lot of liquidity. So I've never said in my meeting the ZiG is stable. I said I was impressed with the work which the Reserve Bank is doing. And the Reserve Bank is 1 out of 20 of critical institutions which must work to support the currency. So Zimbabweans, they want to have comprehension skills to understand what has been said. They jump into conclusion. That's why I'm educating you. I was impressed by Minister of Finance, not by the whole system of government. Those were two different issues.
But some would then argue that if the RBZ is doing such a wonderful work and they understand the economic matrices, they wouldn't be saying statements like, we are prepared to go for a monocurrency if things are the way you're painting them.
I think you should ask them, when are they going to have the monocurrency? Because you saw a headline in the newspaper. My understanding when I met them, they are going to have a monocurrency tomorrow. Unless if there is a political push from somewhere. As critical minds of the country, Central Bank, they understand the minimum requirement for the introduction of the monocurrency. And one of it is to have a 6-month import cover, which I've talked about, $4.5 billion. And they have $731 billion. If they work so hard by the end of the year, they might have $1 billion. So that will be 1/4 of what they want. And in any right thinking Central Bank official, I don't think they can say we are going to have a monocurrency, but anytime soon. If they're going to do it, then I'm not the one who's going to be their guarantor. I'm telling you what I think is we should be done and how it should be done, right? There are 6 conditions that must be addressed, but I don't know whether we have time to look at that to have a monocurrency. But those 6 conditions are far away from reaching a monocurrency. And that is why you see Minister of Finance is afraid to use the ZiG. Because if there is a reckless payment using the ZiG by the Minister of Finance, the rate will run away.
So, some people also want to know, because you have consistently said that the local currency will not work until or unless we are allowed to pay for critical things in the local currency. And this includes your fuel, this includes your passport. In your conversation, is there any movement towards making sure that the fuel is available in ZiG?
Then I'll be divulging what we discussed. It will be unethical. Because I want to respect our meeting. We had a meeting, and I gave them my view. They gave me their views in confidence.
But this is your view.
But my view, I will not say are they moving towards that. I will tell you what I think. What I said to them in Parliament in October 2021, because it was in a public forum, is that I challenged the Minister of Finance. There was a discussion to his presentation in Victoria Falls. He was presenting midterm review. And I was the discussant. I gave him simple homework. If you want your currency to work, create demand for it. And my submission was very simple. If you want to create demand for ZiG, for local currency, then it was Zimbabwean dollar, and restrain the runaway of the black market, demand all your taxes in ZiG.
And they've done that, is it? They're now demanding 50% of QPGs in ZiG.
No, talk to mining companies, they pay taxes in the currency of trade. So when you're exporting platinum, diamonds, or gold, whatever, your currency of trade is US dollar. So they pay tax in the currency of trade.
This is what the battle that the Minister of Finance, that Zimra has been having with Delta, is it?
Correct. So
USD in, USD out.
correct. So basically, government is refusing their own currency, which is my bone of contestation to say they must use. Because my point, I want you to hear this point, is that if every business knows that I am going to pay my VAT, my 2% tax, my QPD taxes, my duty, everything using ZiG. When the payment is made into your account using ZiG, and you know it's mandatory that you're going to pay government taxes using ZiG, there's no push for you to stampede to the black market because you want to keep it to use for that purpose. So you restrain the activity on the black market. But if in one end, the government of Zimbabwe goes for what I'm saying, they make payments using ZiG, and they refuse the ZiG for taxes because they want US dollars. So the Minister of Finance in that parliament was a public meeting. He refused. He said, no, I also want US dollars. So that's where the problem is. One of the bigger problems is in the Minister of Finance. So I am of the view that we need to progressively increase the usage of ZiG, not to relegate ZiG as an orphan, by having government departments accepting ZiG as the currency. You know, electricity, mining companies also pays. They are not allowed to pay electricity using ZiG. They have to use what? US dollars. Now, look at how it does on the willing buyer, willing seller. They export, they get 70% of their exports, 30% is retained by central bank, right? And that 30%, let's say they are given the 30% as ZiG.
Which they are not.
Which they are not,
by the way.
Which they are not, right?
And the RBZ refuses or ZiG.
No, let me finish my point. But I want to get somewhere. So they are not allowed to use that 30% in ZiG to pay for QPDs. They are not allowed to pay for electricity. Now, in a normal functioning economy, assuming that we have now larger volumes of ZiG now transacting, assuming the Ministry of Finance is increasing the use of the ZiG, you see it will affect the performance of the foreign market exchange rate. Because what will be the motivation for the exporter to liquidate additional US dollars from 70% to ZiG when the ZiG is not allowed to be used for any payment? So, Ministry of Finance is a stumbling block to the stability of the currency. Amongst other factors, they play a critical role.
But let's talk about this 30%. My sources in this mining or exporters rather say that the Reserve Bank is actually failing to pay them the ZiG, that they withhold the 30%.
Yes, I also got the same view. I also have clients in the private sector. So I think what I can say without being specific whom I talk to, it's a mixed bag.
So
can I qualify the point?
My point, as you qualify it, is that you are impressed by reserve money that's being built on looting of private property, because you take someone's 30%, you don't give them the ZiG, you don't pay them, you just take it.
So you've gone ahead of me, of my point. The point I want to make is that I understand some of the companies in the mining sectors have agreements with the Ministry of Finance, not even with central bank, that the 30% must be, they have a memorandum of agreement on how it should be released for payments and for safeguarding its the value, and for most likely for future payments of QPDs. And that agreement empowers the Minister of Finance, who hold the debt for central bank now, to hold that 30%. Right. So dig deeper, you can verify what I'm telling you. So you cannot then say central bank has a hand in that particular instance where standing agreements are available. Right? So this, I got it from validated sources in a triangulated manner, not only from one source. And it's one of the things which then create confusion to say, to what extent are they paying? But at the end of the day, I think what is very important is that, for me, it's about who the use of the currency. Because if central bank owes me 30%, right? And if I can pay, assuming there are some who have no contractual agreement with Ministry of Finance, but I heard the majority have contractual agreement, right? It means it should allow me to have flexibility to forfeit it for QPDs, because it desquares itself. So for me, is the issue, the currency must be used for payment of taxes, whether duty or any other form of taxes. And central bank, if they are not paying the 30%, they should pay it because that's not their money. But the major component of what is in the $731 million, which you are saying they are stealing people's money, is gold, which has gone to 3.4 tons. I was about to say billion tons, and I think that is a plus, which any reasonable person must say is okay. It's good progress. In fact, I was actually thinking as an economist to say, as we are discussing here, gold is actually in a bubble, right? And we are pushing towards, by the end of the year, $4,000, history breaking. Right now it's $3,400 for ounce. So Zimbabwe now, we need to maximize on their natural resource to dig more gold and build more reserves, so that we can actually move from 3.4 tons to even 30 tons if possible. So that this is a season in which we are, right? And then sweat the assets, because we can sell the gold and build more US dollar reserves, because the bubble at some point will burst. Right now, if you look at the news, central banks globally are buying gold as a safe asset, because the US dollar is becoming a threat. The Americans are giving sanctions using the US dollar, and also the tariff hike done by Trump is shivering the market. So investments are being made in gold. So Zimbabwe has an opportunity to build more reserves. So it's an area which I think, beyond just saying that we are 731 million, we can do more as a country.
Would it be fair if I say to you that over the past 4 or 5 years, there has been more attention in terms of looking at the currency as the fundamental driver of the economy, and leaving out the other areas, production, industry, and have been somewhat neglected. The focus is on money supply, money supply, money supply. Is that a fair assessment?
It's a fair assessment. The major common subject under discussion in the country is currency issue. And clearly, because of the pains it brings when it crashes. But there hasn't been a shared view from a policy perspective. Yes, in the public domain, we all agree that we need production. But to then say, let's have debate on the critical word called production, and how we unpack how we can address production, we have not had that opportunity in an extensive manner, the way we see massive, robust debate on the currency. Hence my submission that as long as we don't bring into discussions these other line ministries, which plays a critical role in structural policies, which I've mentioned before, we are not going anywhere when it comes to the currency, because it looks like we know the problem, but we don't know how to address it. And we can only address it when we say production. And what is it? And even in this meeting, we cannot address everything which should be done to address production. We are talking about national development strategy number 2. And the question to say, our central theme should be production and economic structural transformation. But what are the levers and the drivers of that? And that is an issue which we need to have a robust debate when we are developing NDS2. NDS1 had those elements, but I don't think we had, even now to say it's coming to an end. Where are the meetings where the reviews are being done? in terms of our achievement based on those pillars, which are in 14 pillars in the NDS1. What is the coverage by media? How are we building? Is a topic or issue for us to say we want to build our country. There's a missing point there in terms of the coverage and the information dissemination and knowledge management in the subject of addressing production. So we can talk. Remember, currency issue started on 14 November 1997, the Black Friday, when our currency crashed. And very soon we'll be looking, should be 28 years now of currency crisis. And the underlying factor there is production and the excessive money. So you don't have production, but excessive money. So that is where we are missing it.
Let's talk about this. There's been this mushrooming of service stations. This talks about massive consumption of fuel. Does it not? And how does a country that doesn't have production consume so much fuel?
Okay. No, I think the starting point is to say, why are we having mushroom in service stations? And the previous point which we talked about comes into play of transfer pricing, illicit financial flow, in the cleaning of money. And you would have a sense that some of these garage stations, or not all of them, I think I want to underline that, are results of illicit financial flows. And the easiest way of cleaning money is to put a garage for a fuel station. But also, Zimbabwe is not a dead economy in the informal sector. It's quite alive. So there is a market for fuel. That's why you see they are not idle, they are working. So the challenge which we now have two economies. One which we can account for, which is the formal side. The shadow one is a black box. If anyone sits here and say, we know how big is the informal sector, that's a lie. You need to do a massive census. And it's very difficult again to get the correct figures because there's no the credibility of information you can get when you talk to people who are selling the pavement, it's very difficult. So we have
because they don't trust the government.
They don't trust the government, and even if when you go there, they think that you are coming from Zimra, maybe you want to give us taxes. So there's mistrust, and so we have a big economy. That's why even outside fuel, you can look at the construction sector, housing, it's massive. So Zimbabweans have built their own resilience. They are on their own. So you have two central banks, the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe and the Matrix Bank of Zimbabwe, which is keeping the money, and we don't know how much money is there. And they have their own rules, they have their own Minister of Finance, they live in their. And now the danger now is that also the formal sector have joined the informal sector because it's a market for cash. I can talk for export. Is there any common sense for Mugano enterprises to export a commodity to external markets outside Zimbabwe when there's a local market where I can get cash immediately, and I can actually get that money without even paying tax, and it comes to me as hard notes, and I evade 30% retention. So the formal sector have joined it. So they are also, this informal sector is also liquidated and empowered by the formal sector, except those who are in the retail. That's why you saw them closing. But those who are not in the retail, who are in the manufacturing, and they mirror the informal sector in terms of their sector. Because remember, all the sectors of the economy, whether it's mining, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's hardware, subsectors, in the formal sector, it's also in the informal sector. So they're thriving big time. They're making real money because a lot of life are happening in there. And the formal sector is staffed. Minister of Finance is staffed from a tax point of view.
Now, as we close, Professor Mugano, you have said you are professor of the poor. Are you still a professor of the poor, or you've been bought?
So I think what you need to understand is that you cannot say, if you meet, and I just want to qualify my view before, because it's easy to say I'm not bought, but does it make sense to the public? You meet Minister of Finance. If they say, let's have a meeting tomorrow, I'll meet them. The same question can also go for members of parliament. I can also say, if I want to use the same logic, they are bought.
Are they not?
No, whether they are bought or not, but if I want to use the same logic, because they're in parliament, they are actually in parliament where the Speaker of Parliament is ZANU-PF, senior member. The President of Senate is ZANU-PF. The President of Zimbabwe, he has got some time when it comes to parliament to give State of the Nation address, and the members of parliament interact with him in that State of the Nation address, right? They are in committees where the chair can be ZANU-PF, a member of parliament, and the opposition leaders, members of parliament, are also in that meeting. And when you look at on Twitter, I was very amazed when they were attacking me to say you are bought. But I said, wait a minute, what are you doing in parliament? Does it mean to say by having an association and engaging in a constructive national discourse, you are bought? And we need to look at that from that context. Are we supposed to say a Zimbabwean, because we differ in views, we differ in our political inclination, we should not say eye to eye when it is about discussing a national issue? So the question is to say, what kind of a generation are we building? Now, the question now, even to opposition, is that do they want the similar situation to be applied to them? Let's say, for argument's sake, tomorrow they are now in office. Are they desiring a situation whereby critical minds who are going to be engaging with them, let's say they come from ZANU-PF, they're engaging them. They should not engage them because they are now in government. I don't think that's how we should wire our mind as a people. Now, answering your question now, this was the context. I will continue to meet policymakers if there is room, because I've told you from the beginning, I am a professor of economics, and I think it's only professional to discuss a particular policy before it is produced. This is what we're saying here. And I don't want to be a hypocrite when the door is opened that come and give us your views. I would want them to deal with the policy when it comes out and say, I disagree with this on this basis because I would disagree with it. If it carries some points which I think are good, I should even professionally say these are good policies without fear or favor. What I will refuse clearly is to play to the gallery where people want to define where I am. And they want to put me a brand to say, if you meet economic ministries and the government agencies, you are a sellout. That I will not accept. I want to end by saying, I have been working with the government of Zimbabwe for the last 20 years. Right from university, I worked in the Ministry of Industry and Commerce. Everyone who is working there in those government ministries are not ZANU-PF people. They are not bought. They are serving their country. I worked in the Ministry of Industry and Commerce for 6 years as an economist, as a senior economist, as a principal economist, and I left. I went into academic. I returned back working with the government of Zimbabwe as a senior advisor to the government of Zimbabwe under the World Bank program Ease of Doing Business for 5 years. Right? I continue to work with the government of Zimbabwe as a technical expert under the World Bank, various agribusiness policies, United Nations, and the value chains, development, as an international consultant. So I don't choose my clients to say, I've been given work to advise the Minister of Agriculture on value chain development, this value chain. They say, I don't want, because someone on Twitter will say, you are bought. I do the same in the region. I can single out Namibia, 2023 to 2024. I was working in the office of the president. I developed the master plan for industrialization for Namibia, right? I developed the regulations for special economic zones for Namibia. Last year, towards the end of last year, I was in Swaziland. So working with the government of Swaziland, helping them to build capacity for them to benefit from SADC free trade area, right? With the South African government, the same with the Premier Office in KwaZulu-Natal. We are working on industrial clusters, agribusiness hubs there, right? So I'm just giving you examples. At a continental level, I was one of the leading consultants with the United Nations developing a roadmap to common market for the Africa continental free trade area for all the member states which have ratified the Africa continental free trade. And the report has been launched this month of July. I was one of the leading consultants, right? So I cannot then say, that's why I say I'm a professor of economics. I can't say I don't want to see Zimbabwe. Someone must take me to a medical doctor and examine me if my mind is working. It's like you are a journalist. You can't say, I don't want to interview Comrade Mchangwa because it's an PF. So how are we going to get your news as a journalist? So you should interview opposition. Then you are a purely journalist who is on the board. Then that is where is Zimbabwe. We need to really look at it and say, is it what we want? So I would want to end by saying, Gift Mugano is a raw guy. I believe in where I come from. I believe in humble beginnings. Come from Chimanmani. I values which I respect. I'm not a person who can be bought by anybody. My view is very simple. I should provide constructive view to government. I'm not doing it to be given any favor because I'm not idle. I am busy, and but it gives you honor and you feel happy that if you can talk to people, we should talk as people. If we can't talk, it doesn't mean to say when you meet anyone, you agree on your submission. No, and it doesn't mean to say when the police comes, I should then go around and supporting it because I met them. I should be objective when I am assessing it. And most important, I must give my alternative views that I don't agree with it. And if you check in every meeting which we had, I would give alternative views. What should be done? Even here, we're giving alternative views which must be done. That is how we can work together as a team to build a better Zimbabwe.
Thank you very much, Professor Mugano, for your insights. Now, here on this, the situation right now on Heart and Soul TV and radio, I, your host as usual, Dara B. Our view and our founding principles are that everyone must be given a voice. Everyone must be heard. Come as you are and contribute to the building of this nation. We think Zimbabwe can only be built if people talk to each other and not through each other. We believe that it is not a weakness to engage. It is not a weakness to share value and ideas. As Zimbabwe moves forward, we all should put our hands on the deck to build a nation that our children and their children will be proud of. A nation that qualifies to sit on the table of nations and be seen and be heard. Now, if the currency or the economy tumbles, it will not only affect those who spoke about it, it will even affect those who are silent about it. So it's time for all of us to engage. This is and this will always be the situation right now. And I, as usual, Dara B. Until next time, please don't forget to like, share, and comment so that this content can reach as many people as possible. Thank you very much, Prof.
My pleasure. Thank you.